He shoved her in front of the entire school. What she did next left the whole gym frozen. You ever feel like you're having one of those nights where everything finally lines up? That was Talia Monroe's prom night, May 17th, Bakersfield, California. McKinley High had turned their gym into this glittery ballroom, streamers, lights, and way too much cologne hanging in the air. Talia had been quiet most of the year, the kind of girl who didn't need to be loud to be noticed. People respected her, even if they didn't say it out loud. Always kind, always sharp. She wasn't in the popular crowd, but she never needed to be. Her vibe spoke for itself. That night, she showed up in an emerald green dress that caught the lights just right when she moved. Her hair was pulled up into a soft bun, a few curls left out like little commas framing her face. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, but walked in like she didn't want to make a big deal. She was there with a couple of friends, Jasmine and Autumn. They were dancing, laughing, trying to ignore the lame punch and awkward slow songs. But even in that crowd of hundreds, all eyes eventually found their way to Talia, especially his. Logan Brenner, tall, loud, always trying to be the center of attention. You know the type. His jokes weren't really jokes. They were more like warnings. If you didn't laugh, you might be next. He didn't like Talia. Never said why, but everyone knew. Maybe it was how she never gave him the time of day. Maybe it was because she didn't flinch around him. Most people played along with Logan to keep the peace, not Talia. Earlier that year, in history class, Logan made some comment under his breath about how Talia always acted like she was too good for the rest of them. She didn't even look at him when she responded, just kept writing in her notebook and said, clear as day, maybe you should focus on your own work instead of trying to be a virus in everybody else's life. The whole class went quiet. Even Mr. Donnelly didn't know what to say. So yeah, there was a little heat between them already, and prom just gave Logan a stage. But the turning point came right after the big moment, the crowning. Every year, McKinley let the students vote for prom king and queen, but this year, for the first time, they changed it up. Prom royalty. 2 winners, regardless of gender, voted by the senior class. When Talia's name got called, the gym erupted. People actually screamed. She looked shocked, like someone had said her name by mistake. She hugged Autumn, then Jasmine, then stepped up to the stage in those silver heels she almost didn't wear. They placed the small silver crown on her head, handed her a bouquet, and played that overused pop song everyone was already sick of. Logan stood near the back of the gym, arms folded, jaw tight. The guy who used to win everything, pep rallies, homecoming court, class clown, was suddenly just background noise. You could almost hear the fuse inside him spark. But no one expected him to act on it so fast. Talia was stepping off the stage, bouquet in hand, eyes scanning the crowd for her friends. That's when Logan moved in. He had that fake smile plastered on, the one he used when he was pretending to be charming. He reached out like he was going to shake her hand. Some people even thought he was going to congratulate her. But then, he shoved her. Not a tap, not a bump, a real shove. Both hands, straight to the chest. Talia stumbled back. Her heels scraped across the floor. She nearly dropped the flowers, arms swinging to balance herself. Her body tensed, like she was catching herself from falling into something much deeper than just the gym floor. The music didn't stop, but people stopped dancing. Gasps, whispers. A few girls covered their mouths. Teachers stood frozen, unsure whether they'd really seen what they thought they saw. Jasmine yelled out, "Are you serious right now?" Logan just laughed, loud and ugly. "I was just playing," he said, shrugging like it was a joke. Didn't think a crown came with a force field. Nobody laughed, but Talia didn't cry. She didn't walk away. And what she did next? That's where everything changed. Talia stared at him. No words, no blink, just this stillness, like the world had hit pause. For a second, you could almost forget where you were. It wasn't a gym anymore. It wasn't prom. It was just her, standing there, trying to make sense of why the night had twisted like this. But it was Logan who broke the silence first. "What?" he said, arms raised like he was the one being accused. "It was a joke. Y'all are way too sensitive." He turned to a small group behind him, guys from the basketball team, a few girls in tight dresses clutching their phones like shields. One of the guys, Darnell, gave this half smile, but didn't say a word. No one did. Not even the ones who usually hyped him up. Because here's the thing. The joke didn't land. Not this time. Talia took a breath. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet like she was anchoring herself. She could have screamed, thrown something, cursed him out. Everyone was probably expecting some kind of meltdown, but she didn't give them that. She walked, not fast, not slow, just steady. Straight past Logan, straight past the crowd, past the music that had started back up like nothing happened, up the steps, back to the stage. At first, people thought she was going to talk to the DJ, maybe ask for a new song, maybe complain. But then she picked up the mic. The DJ looked confused. The music faded out, awkwardly, like even the speakers were nervous. Talia stood there, holding that mic with one hand, the crown slightly crooked on her head, flowers still clutched in the other. Her voice came out calm, but it wasn't soft. It carried. "Some people don't like seeing you happy," she said, scanning the room. "They don't like it when someone they thought was supposed to stay quiet gets noticed, gets celebrated." Nobody moved. "I don't know what Logan thought he was doing," she said, without looking at him. "But I know this. This crown, it didn't come from people like him. It came from y'all, from the people who actually saw me this year." A girl near the bleachers whispered, "Say that," under her breath. Talia shifted her weight, lowered the flowers to her side. "You spend years learning how to shrink yourself just so people won't mess with you. Walk different. Talk different. You smile so people won't think you're a threat. But all that shrinking, it don't save you. Because the moment you shine, someone still feels like they need to knock you down." That line hit hard. Even the teachers, Mr. Donnelly, Ms. Reyes, they were locked in, faces unreadable. Logan, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to crawl under a table, but she wasn't done. "I almost let it ruin my night. I almost let him win. But I remembered something my grandma told me. You can't let people who hate their own reflection make you ashamed of your shine." Somebody clapped, then someone else. A ripple. It wasn't wild, not yet, but it was real. She gave a small nod, then walked back down the steps, head high, crown still tilted. She didn't fix it. She didn't have to. But what happened next was something nobody expected, not even Talia. As Talia stepped off the stage, something strange happened. The crowd parted. Not dramatically, not like a movie, just enough for her to walk through without bumping shoulders. People moved, gently, almost with respect. Some looked at her, some looked away, but no one said a word. She found Jasmine and Autumn near the punch table. Jasmine looked like she was about to cry, but held it in. Autumn just gave Talia this look, this quiet kind of pride. The kind that says, "I saw you, and you did that." But while Talia was surrounded by love, Logan stood frozen, still near the back of the gym, alone. His boys had drifted away. Darnell was pretending to scroll through his phone. The girls that used to laugh at all his jokes, gone. It was like the room had flipped and he was the joke now, but nobody was laughing. Coach Whitaker came over finally, pulling Logan aside. His voice was low, but tense. "You need to leave, now." Logan threw up his hands. "You serious? Over that?" Coach didn't blink. "You're lucky we're not calling your parents and the cops." Logan looked around, but no one came to back him up, not even the DJ. For the first time in a long time, he had to face something he couldn't talk his way out of. He stormed out, muttering something under his breath, but nobody followed him. Nobody called out his name. The door swung shut behind him, and it was like the room finally exhaled. Back near the dance floor, Talia was still quiet. People started to come up to her. Some classmates, some underclassmen she barely knew. "Yo, that was brave. You said exactly what needed to be said. I got a little sister. I hope she grows up with your kind of strength." Even some of the teachers came over. Ms. Reyes put a gentle hand on Talia's shoulder. "You all right, baby?" Talia nodded. "I'm good now." But inside, her heart was still thudding, not out of fear, but something else, like her body hadn't caught up to what had just happened. She looked around at the crowd, all these faces, some she'd known since kindergarten, some who'd never said a word to her until tonight. And now they were looking at her different, not with pity, with something closer to respect. And for the first time that night, she let herself smile. But the story doesn't end with applause, because when the lights come on and the music stops, that's when people show you who they really are. The rest of the night moved, but slower, like everyone was still processing what they'd just witnessed. The DJ tried to bring the mood back up, played a few crowd favorites. People danced again, but not like before. It wasn't wild or messy. It felt thoughtful. Talia didn't go back to the dance floor right away. She and her girls sat near the bleachers, sipping on watered-down punch, letting the tension in their bodies melt 1 inch at a time. Then, around 10:30, something unexpected happened. Principal Vargas stepped up to the stage, no mic, just his voice. "I just want to say," he began, looking directly at Talia, "what we saw tonight was more than grace, more than maturity. That was leadership. And if anyone in this room doesn't understand that yet, watch her closely. You might learn something." The crowd clapped again, not the loud, hype kind, the slow, steady kind that sinks into your skin. Talia felt Jasmine squeeze her hand. "Girl," she whispered, "you just made history at this school." And that's when it hit her. She hadn't just survived the moment. She owned it. But the real twist came when she got home. It was almost midnight. Her mom, Mrs. Monroe, was waiting in the living room, satin scarf on her head and a cup of tea in her hand. She stood up as soon as Talia walked through the door. "You all right?" Talia nodded. Mrs. Monroe studied her daughter's face, then gently touched her cheek. "You didn't cry?" "No," Talia said. "I talked." That answer made her mom pause. "Talked?" Talia sat down and told her everything. The push, the mic, the silence, the crowd. Mrs. Monroe listened, eyes never leaving her daughter. When Talia finished, she just nodded, slow and proud. "I was worried when I saw you in that dress," she said. Talia raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I knew somebody was going to feel threatened by how much light you brought in the room." Talia blinked. That wasn't the kind of thing you expect to hear from your mom. But somehow, it made everything make sense. "Sometimes people don't need a reason to try and break you," she said. "Your joy is the reason." They sat there for a while, no more words, just that late-night quiet, that kind of peace that comes after a storm you never asked for. But not everyone was ready to let it go. And the next morning, things got even more real. The next morning, Talia didn't even have time to roll over good before her phone started buzzing. First it was Jasmine. "Girl, check Instagram." Then Autumn. "Logan's trending. Your speech is everywhere." Still half asleep, Talia rubbed her eyes and opened her notifications. Her stomach dropped. Her name was all over social media. Local pages, classmates' stories, even a couple teachers had shared clips. Someone had recorded the entire moment. Her walking back up, the speech, the crowd listening. It was out there now. She scrolled through the comments. This is what real royalty looks like. She said what so many girls like us have been too scared to say. Logan got quiet real fast. Talia Monroe. Remember that name? But it wasn't just praise. A few accounts, private ones, fake names, were dragging her. She made it bigger than it was. Trying to be a victim when it was just a joke. People too sensitive these days. She put the phone down, let it buzz in her hand. It was overwhelming, but she wasn't surprised. That's how it works, right? Speak up and people either lift you or try to tear you down for it. But around noon, something happened that stopped her cold. A message from Logan. "Hey, can we talk?" She stared at it for a minute. Just a few words, but it didn't sound like him. Not the Logan from the gym. Not the one who shoved her in front of a crowd and called it a joke. She ignored it. 10 minutes later, another one. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I messed up." Then a longer one. He said he'd been going through stuff. How it wasn't about her, how he was used to being the favorite, and when he wasn't, he took it out on the wrong person. He ended with, "You didn't deserve that. No one does. I know it's late, but I mean it." Talia stared at the screen. No anger, just this strange feeling in her chest, like her heart didn't know whether to forgive or walk away. She didn't reply. She didn't delete the message either. She just let it sit there. Later that night, there was a special announcement on the school's website. A statement from Principal Vargas. "We are deeply proud of the courage shown by Talia Monroe, and we want to make it clear that any form of harassment, physical or verbal, will not be tolerated. Every student deserves to feel safe and celebrated, always." And that meant more than the crown. Monday morning at school was different. She wasn't just Talia anymore. People stopped her in the hall. Teachers smiled a little longer. Even the quiet kids who never said much gave her nods of respect. But she wasn't trying to be a star. She was just trying to be herself, unapologetically. In English class, Mr. Donnelly used the first 5 minutes to talk about what happened. "This weekend, we saw something powerful," he said. "We saw how words can protect or destroy, how silence can be strength, and how standing up doesn't always mean shouting. It can also mean telling the truth, calmly, while everyone's watching." No one said a word. They all knew who he was talking about. That day, when Talia walked into the cafeteria, there was a seat saved for her. But not just by Jasmine or Autumn, by students who never sat with her before, some from different friend groups, some who used to keep their distance. It was like a quiet invitation, a reminder, you changed something here. She didn't become a celebrity. She didn't go viral in the world. But in that building, in that town, her story planted a seed. Because courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a girl in heels who gets shoved on prom night and chooses a microphone over revenge. Sometimes, it's the silence that follows the truth that echoes longest. So, if you've ever been made to feel small, overlooked, or targeted just for existing, remember this. You don't have to shrink for anyone. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is speak. If this story meant something to you, share it. Tell someone about Talia Monroe. Speak up when you see something wrong. And most of all, don't let anyone dim your light just because they're uncomfortable with your shine. You never know who's watching, and you never know whose courage might grow because of yours.